So today I want to talk about protagonists in fiction. Namely, how there is a certain type of protagonist that is seen as universally relatable in terms of just common humanity and empathy with their situation and struggles, and isn't that what life is all about? But really, the point I'm trying to make is, why do they always have to be dudes? Like, seriously, think about it. It is common knowledge that Hollywood movies have generally been marketed towards the male demographic. And that's no secret. It should come as no surprise to anyone. And if it does, then I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but it's true. It's the world we live in. Now, and that is also not to say that there are not movies that are marketed towards a female demographic. I'm sure some big producer, CEO, some time ago had the bright idea, wait guys, there's an entire market we're missing out of. All the money we could make. 50% of the population to exploit. Oh, hot diggity dog, it's time to make some cash. And most of the movies marketed towards the female demographic are, of course, romance genre. And that is not to say that if you are a female, it is wrong for you to enjoy romance. I enjoy romance. Oh no, I guess I'm playing into a stereotype. I was totally trying to not do that. And that's also not to say that men cannot enjoy romance films, as I'm sure many of them do. I mean, who decides who can enjoy which genre? It's all just arbitrary anyway. Now back to my original quandary. Why is the standard go-to protagonist in a movie directed at both genres and all audience, family-friendly movies, if you will? Why are most of the time are they men? Especially in action romps, which is what I'm mainly referring to. I first had this idea when I was taking an anthropology class that first introduced me to the unmarked categories. Now, this is a very general concept that can help introduce you to a world of analysis in different cultures. And the general idea is that the unmarked category is that which is deemed normal by the society, and the marked category is the othered. It is the one that requires attention. This concept can be directed at any in versus out group mentality. Now, in the US, if we were talking about race, then white Caucasian people, especially white Caucasian males, would be the unmarked category because they are the societal default based on history and culture. And the marked categories are the minority groups, namely Hispanics, African Americans, Asian Americans, Native Americans, Middle Eastern Americans, anyone who is not the unmarked category. Now, it is very important to turn your attention back to the idea that unmarked category equals normal, equals default. Then it's also important to remember that whatever is normal is deemed arbitrarily by a society. It is not a universally acclaimed fact. What is normal in one culture is completely different and foreign and alien in another culture. There are very few universally agreed upon normals in human history. I feel like one of the few would be, murder is wrong, I guess. I mean, different cultures have different ways around that, I guess. I mean, if it's for the greater good, then, sometimes murder is seen as okay. Like one guy is just like, I'm sorry guys, I know that universally as a species we decided that murder was wrong, but the gods are angry, and that's why our crops have failed this year, and they obviously need a human sacrifice in order to maintain their existence in the universe. So that guy's gotta die. I'm gonna cut his heart out. That's just the way it's gotta be. So men and women. So in our context of what the films that we are looking at, men are the unmarked category, obviously, and women are the unmarked category. That is why it's always such a big deal when an action movie has a female protagonist, because it is out of the norm. It is the marked group, which is not always a negative connotation. It just means that people's attention are drawn to it. Because it is not normal, it requires attention. That's why female role models are such a big deal for young girls. Like, it's not a big deal if, this man in this action movie directed towards 13-year-old boys is a terrible role model, because people are used to it. And there are plenty of other movies that have good male role models, so it's not such a big deal that there's a variety. In fact, I think that there should definitely be a variety in any sort of fictional character, and also that you shouldn't maybe not use fictional characters as your only role model, since they are not here in figments of other people's imaginations that are colored by their own personal biases and life experiences. So maybe real people are the best role models instead of fictional characters. Go figure. But in that case, because there are so few that are deemed good feminist female role models for young girls who don't need no man, that it has become such a big deal when a female is marked as, non-progressive and backwards and not a good female role model, because there is such a smaller pool, as it were, for those types of characters. If there were as many female protagonists out there as there were male protagonists, then this would not be a problem. No one would care whether or not someone was a good female role model and whether someone wasn't. They would just be people. They would be human characters designed to explore the human condition, or maybe just to be entertaining, like how stories are supposed to be. But that's not the way it is. Women are the marked category. There's fewer examples of women as main characters in film, and that's why so much attention is drawn to them in the media. Whether it is deemed by the media as good representation or bad representation. And of course, who decides what is good or bad representation all depends on who is writing that specific piece anyway, and their own personal biases and political opinions. Now, I want to go back to the idea as male equals equally relatable protagonists, especially white Caucasian male. Now, and kind of follow where the logic takes us. Now, if the idea is that both men and women can relate to a male character, then it follows, why should men and women not also be able to relate to a female protagonist? It makes sense, does it? It's like the same idea. But most people who argue against this sort of thing will tell you that, of course, men can't relate to the problems of a woman. They're not women. They have different problems. All those hormones, men can't understand women, because that is not how we were biologically designed, don't you know? And I will argue that that is complete hogwash. Now, let's follow along this line of thought, just for fun. Now, let's take, for example, Harry Potter. Both the movies or the books, it doesn't matter. Harry Potter is a orphaned British boy, and I am an American woman with both my parents. Now, it should follow that I should not be able to relate to or engage with Harry Potter's story at all. I'm not an orphan. I was not physically and psychologically abused by my aunt and uncle, because they did starve him at one point. Do you guys remember that? I am not British, so I do not have that same cultural background with him. I have not been, nor will I ever be, an 11-year-old boy. And let's address the elephant in the room. I'm not a wizard. I think most people are not, unless they're deranged and they really believe that they are one. If so, I'm sorry. I mean, I guess self-delusion is kind of a blissful life to live. Like they say, ignorance is bliss, so if you really believe that you're a wizard, you're probably happier than the rest of us. So maybe you figured it all out, and that's actually the secret to life. So, yeah.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Now, if we were to follow the line of reason that I, as someone of the opposite gender, would not be able to relate to Harry because I do not share his gender, life experiences aside, if we follow the line of thought that I should not be able to relate to Harry on an abject level because I am not a man, and I will never be one, we don't have the same hormones or the same dangly bits, it would seem to reason that I should in no way be able to enjoy the story that is Harry Potter. When in fact, that is ludicrous. So many people around the world of both genders enjoy this story. It is not a matter of gender. It is a universal story of triumphing in the face of hardship and learning new skills and making new friends along the way. It's that sort of tale that just people love to tell and retell. It's called the hero's archetype for a reason. And what's even more interesting is that Harry Potter, the male character that we all relate to, was written by a woman. It begs to reason that if Harry Potter was instead written as an 11-year-old girl instead of an 11-year-old boy, I don't think much of the story would have changed. I think, Harry Potter would have just been a female, and nothing in the story would change at all, really, except maybe some of his love interests. Maybe he would feel more connection more to his mother instead of his father, but still, that's arbitrary, and there are plenty of females out there who connect more to their fathers than their mothers, and vice versa. And now let's flip the spectrum on men being able to prefer a female protagonist. When The Legend of Korra, the sequel series to Avatar: The Last Airbender, was first being aired, there was worry in the Nickelodeon studio that, boys and girls would not engage as much with Korra because she is a female protagonist. She is a strong teenage female protagonist who is designed to have the appearance of a female wrestler, actually. Look it up. The studio was worried that boys wouldn't connect as much with her because, they wouldn't have anything in common. She's a girl. Those exist. Did you know that? But, it turns out that, no, it didn't matter that Korra was a girl because people like watching cool action scenes and they like the world of Avatar. And Avatar: The Last Airbender had plenty of strong female characters that people loved, and all that's changed now is that one of them is the main protagonist. Now, if you don't like Korra for any other reason, namely because she's kind of selfish and stupidly impulsive in the first 2 seasons, that's a different story, and I will give you that. But that is also why seasons 3 and 4 are my favorite, because that's when character development starts to happen, and she starts to become really, really awesome, and I love her, and I love this show. So yeah, men as default protagonists in action blockbusters in Hollywood. It doesn't really make any sense. And it also doesn't make sense that whenever there is a female main protagonist in an action blockbuster that she has to be all like, I'm a strong, independent woman, and I will kick your ass, and I, hate the world, and, I was scorned once. I once believed in love, and I was naive and feminine, and this man dumped me, and now I hate all men, and I'm jaded to the ways of the world. Like those type of characters are fine. But back to my discussion before about how there needs to be a large pool of these type of characters. You can have those type of jaded characters who don't like men, but you can also have strong female protagonists who are also, people, and they enjoy the company of both genders, because that's how the world works. You kind of have to interact with all people, and, they can just be normal people who happen to be female, which is really where all of this is going to be resolved. I feel that there will always be marked and unmarked categories, but women in media, at least, will stop being the marked category, and it is no longer such a big deal that there is a female protagonist. When it is announced that the next blockbuster to come out of Hollywood has a female protagonist, and no one cares, then, world peace. Guys, I think we figured out world peace. We did it.
So, you two are lost kids with no purpose in life, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, full disclosure, the shirt says Très bien on it, but it is missing an accent, and though this is one of my favorite shirts, I am always quite a bit embarrassed to wear it because it is spelled wrong. And I always tell myself that I'm going to get a fabric marker one day and draw in the accent, but I never get around to it. So if you're French, or anyone who's taken French in high school, and you're appalled by this shirt, I understand.